Friday morning I wake up. It's time to tune into the show, 'cause my favorite podcast has a brand new episode. Will they talk about Lost or Chuck, or another one about Friends? Will it be about Michael Scott, or dear God, it's the Muppets again? Welcome to the TV Guys, the show all about
Matt, what are you doing?
The songs for the musical episode of TV Guys.
We're not doing a musical episode. It's an episode talking about musical episodes of other TV shows.
Since when?
Since always. I'm the one who came up with this idea.
I have 9 original songs. You know how long it took me to write them? I have a ballad about the pain of Gilmore Girls and a salsa number about America's Got Talent.
Well, too bad. Nobody coming here to hear us sing.
Can I at least sing?
No.
Hey everyone, welcome back to TV Guys, the show that is the podcast equivalent of William Hung singing. I'm Matt.
I'm Brian. I think it's insulting even for us.
I think having us in the same breath as William Hung is an insult to William Hung.
I should have said, actually, what I should have said is, wait, who? But why do people keep asking me that? Who is that?
Who is that? Man, what a dated reference.
Yeah, because, okay. I'm curious how many of our audience actually knows who we're talking about.
Yeah. It's like there was just that he was a meme. That was all that he was for about a year. And yet he still got an Office reference and he got a guest spot on Arrested Development.
He did?
Yeah, they what Judge Reinhold's TV show, courtroom show, one of the gags was, we have a hung jury, and then it goes to William Hung like singing the theme song for the Judge Reinhold show. Yeah.
And kind of along like the same lines on the other end of like surprisingly good. Remember Susan Boyle got a Boyle reference in Brooklyn Nine-Nine once, which was perfect.
She also got a Boyle reference in Futurama that
she did?
Leela got like this boil on her that would suddenly start singing, and so they called it Susan Boyle.
Did they include the audio of her singing?
I'm not sure. I don't remember.
Because that would be a slam dunk.
That's a slam dunk right there. It's like these people exist for the puns of their names. William Hung and Susan Boyle. Like, oh, we're going to make puns about it.
Okay. Before we move on from American Idol references, which is kind of relevant, kind of not, kind of towing that line.
Yeah.
I recently watched, because of your episode of the other podcast, both the Scooby-Doo movies back to back, and at the end of Scooby-Doo 2, it ends with a big musical number where the big guest is Ruben Studdard. There's no more early 2000s way to date this movie than having Ruben Studdard be the cameo.
It's so funny to see, like, going back, like what they were trying to make big with American Idol stars. Like Clay Aiken appeared in a number different he was in an episode of Scrubs. He did a lot of different guest star stuff, and it's just like Clay Aiken, no offense to him, I don't know about his personality, but I don't feel like he should be a celebrity.
Yeah. And then I mean the biggest success I can think of from that show is Kelly Clarkson. Wasn't she the first winner?
Yep. Yeah, more than anyone else. Like, there are plenty of winners that you guys might enjoy and might like, but Kelly Clarkson had the biggest career for sure. And then there was American Idol fatigue following that, and now it's still going though. I don't know how.
Didn't it go away and then it came back as a reboot? Because now there's different judges.
It could have. I don't know. Any American Idol fans out there, you tell us. We're not 100% sure, but I know more about American Idol from like everyone else than I do from ever watching it.
I did a video back when I was in high school. I used to make, like, my thing was making like dumb videos with my friends at church. And I saw some of one of my old ones. I think I sent this to you, Matt. We did an American Idol spoof. And Paul, who listeners might recognize from his guest appearances on this podcast, played both. Was he did Ruben Studdard and who he played one of the singers.
I thought Wilbur was Ruben.
No, not Ruben Studdard. No, I meant he was Simon Cowell. Yeah, it wouldn't make sense for him to be Ruben Studdard. It was he was Simon Cowell.
It was a different time.
Doing his wonderful British accent.
Oh, geez. And we've heard it. We've heard it. If you listen to Ted Lasso, you get the sense of that beautiful British accent. It's not nearly as good as my Stephen Grant, granted, but well, like Brian said, we are talking about musical episodes of TV. And so we've got a couple that we're going to talk about here. What we aren't going to talk about is we're not going to talk about TV shows that are musicals to begin with, like Gallivant or Glee. We are going to talk about shows that randomly would go into this genre and suddenly have their own musical episode. And it's really funny because there's a number of them too that we're going to talk about, but there's a number of them that I just remember the advertising for it just as much as I remember the episode, where it's like, this is a big deal. This is a musical episode. Everyone watch it.
And we're also going to talk about the excuses for why they do that. A lot of dream sequences and brain aneurysms here.
Oh my gosh, so many medical, especially like medical shows that do this. They're like, it's ambiguous, so we can go ahead and say, oh, it's because of blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So, there's two categories though for these musicals. One of them is original songs, and more oftentimes you're going to see these shows are going to do original songs, but there are a couple episodes of different shows that they use non-original songs. Okay. So I'm going to jump into just that because I feel like that's a little bit more of the exception, because it tends to be, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. We're going to write our own music instead of having to pay for other music. So one of them that
I have one of my lists. I only have four. Matt has more. One of mine uses existing songs, and the other three are all original music. So I have one to contribute to this category. Go ahead, Matt.
All right. So one of them is, speaking of medical shows, it is Grey's Anatomy. They had a musical episode called Song Beneath the Song. And it was an odd, it worked really well because actually they had a lot of good singers on Grey's Anatomy. So the episode in and of itself was Izzy gets into Arizona driving the car and gets into an accident. Izzy flies through the windshield, and she's just like, her brain is like firing these last neurons, and as she's like trying to cling to sanity and trying to cling to consciousness, she's hearing people sing, and their explanation of why the music is happening is just a very small narrator introduction, like, we don't know all the things about the brain. And so it's just like, we're not going to get into any actual medical stuff. We're just going to go ahead and leave it nice and ambiguous just for an excuse for people to sing. And this was a pretty good episode because they did really well with like ensemble pieces. And so especially there's two big songs that they did really well, like when she first arrives at the hospital and everyone is there taking care of their own, they're all singing together, Chasing Cars. The If I Lay Here, okay, Would You Lie With Me? So they're all singing that as she arrives and take care of her. And then towards the end of the episode, they end with the phrase "How to Save a Life" as they're like actually battling to take care of her. And then she also is pregnant at the time, but the baby is going to have to be born prematurely in order to be able to make sure the baby survives and she survives. And maybe only one of them is going to get to. And so, they do a really good job of that at the end as they're all singing "How to Save a Life" and they're working on her and all that. So it's a good episode, but in the middle, it does this weird detour where, because like they're all like, oh no, is she gonna survive? And then they're like, but we need to have a fun song. So then they do like kind of like this sexy flirting type song, and they use all the couples in the show, and like all of them are like flirting with each other, but it's just like, you guys are all, the timeline doesn't work. You guys are all at the hospital, like no one's leaving. You're all like, we have to save Izzy, and then suddenly you're at their apartment and like, ooh, flirting, blah blah blah. It's just like, this song just doesn't fit the episode at all. You just wanted them all not to be downers. That's all you wanted. Just be honest.
Yeah, pretty much. I've never seen that episode, but from what you're saying, because you do want to have that variety. You want to have fun. You want to have some light. But I think there's better ways to do it than like, all right, we're going to take a break from your medical care to sing a song.
And now it's time for Silly Songs with Larry.
Wait, so Matt, you're saying when you go to the doctor in the middle of like you have surgery, we don't like you do. Your
Yes.
surgeon doesn't just stop and sing and then get back to surgery afterwards?
It's weird. They don't. No. You'd hope so. You'd want that to happen, but whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
I personally would like my surgeon to, finish fixing me, but
Well, to each his own.
all right. How many more do you have in this category?
I think I've just got one more, and that's why I picked Grey's Anatomy over this other one, because I think this could be on your list.
Okay. Is it that 70s show?
It is that 70s show. There you go.
So I wasn't able to stream this one, but I watched a couple episodes. I watched 2 songs. This, I believe, it's in Fez's imagination, correct?
Yes.
So there's the 2 songs that I remember. These are the ones that I remembered, which was like the Good Morning song, where like Fez is imagining himself as brothers with Eric and Hyde, and the 3 of them, along with Red and Kitty, are singing like the
Happy Together.
Happy. Yeah, that's a song. Happy Together, and like this shows them all being like this cliche family. Even Red's like, "Are you guys singing?" And then he bursts in singing as well, and it's just yeah. It uses the 70s song, which like that's good. The show has got a good. We're using everything from this time period.
Yeah, that worked really well for that idea. I don't think this episode was very good because they didn't do any other like substitute voices except for Mila Kunis. She was the only one that she's like, I'm gonna have a professional do my voice because I can't sing very well. But it's like, you listen to it and none of them can really sing well. Topher Grace was a little better than I would expect, but I wouldn't say he's a good singer. But yeah, you're listening to it and it's just like, this isn't very strong singing, but at the same time there's a little bit of a charm in that. Yeah. And so you can't hate on it as much, but like it made me disrespect Mila Kunis a little bit more because she's like, "Oh, all of you guys are singing, but I'm gonna have my own person."
Well,
like,
do you think it was her that, or do you think the network was like, "She's terrible, we're gonna replace her"?
I think if they have Kurtwood Smith sing and not her, then it's like, how much worse can you get? No offense to him, but they did a blooper reel at the end of the episode where he's just showing like how much Kurtwood kept missing all of his stuff. But it's like, props to him. He's like, well, I'm doing it. I'm gonna try and make it work. But like, he kept missing all these cues for dancing. It's like, this is clearly not your wheelhouse.
But you would expect Red to not be as great of a singer as Jackie. So maybe they're like, oh, it's okay.
Maybe. I don't know. But it's like none of them really like blew me away. So it's just the fact that like, why not just have her sing it too? I don't know.
And then there's the big song at the end, to Shake Your Groove thing, which was the whole cast, like even like Bob and Leo, like everybody. And that was fun because you can see how much they're having fun with that.
Oh yeah. Also Leo, not a good singer either. Tommy Chong is not a singer, guys, believe it or not.
But I mean, in and out of character, he's probably stoned.
True. That's fair. But yeah, no, like it works. I get it. The hook of it works. The execution of it as I'm watching, I'm like, this isn't, it's not my type of episode.
By the way, real quick, so it just bugs me in all of the press about the new That 90s show. They, obviously they say Red and Katie are coming back. They say 5 out of the 6 kids are coming back, not Danny Masterson. And then they say Leo's coming back. Where is the announcement that Bob's coming back? He's like the one that would make the most sense. What is Don Stark doing that he can't come over and be in a few episodes? Like, I want Bob back in that show. I'll be very disappointed if he is not in that show.
Justice for Bob.
Yeah. As far as I know, he's not involved in any scandals. He's still alive. Just throw him in there.
Maybe they're hiding that. Maybe he's the big reveal. He's that Easter egg like Marvel has that they don't ever want to talk about, and then they just show. He's that big of a deal.
He is, yes.
Mr. Stark.
I don't feel so good, Mr. Stark.
All right, so I've got 5 other ones that all have written their own music, and they're all very different. And you've got 3 of these. So
there's 2 out of my 3 I know are on your list, and then the other one quite possibly is on your list.
Okay, so I'm going to start with one that's not on your list. I've talked about this show before. I really liked it, but this season of the show was not very strong. It's like one of those shows that goes on too long. And that was Once Upon a Time.
Okay.
And so in the Once Upon a Time also does like the Scrubs thing where it does like a spin-off season afterwards, but it didn't go anywhere. So it ends up just being like a season 8 of that show when really technically it is more of a spin-off.
Mm-hmm.
And so this would be considered the penultimate episode, the one right before the season or the series finale, if they didn't do that final spin-off season. And so that Once Upon a Time is all about fairy tale characters living in real world, and that they were brought over a curse from the queen from Snow White. She brings all of the fairy book characters into the real world, and so that is like the hook of the show to begin with. But in this season, she's on their side because there's a lot of different. They play fast and loose with different villain and heroes. Like the main character, she's not a fairy tale character, but she is the daughter of Snow White and Prince Charming. And this episode is the wedding between her and Captain Hook. And so this does like Lost, where it does flashbacks, and it's got some people from Lost who write it, and so that would make sense. So the show does these flashbacks. So it's flashing back to this time when they're all in the fairy tale world, when a curse. No, it wasn't a curse. It was actually a wish that Snow White made that caused everyone in town to be singing. And so they're all singing like these songs. Like in real present time, it was just the actual acting and no music. But then you do these flashbacks and they'd have everyone be singing. And so it's like the power of these songs were strong enough to defeat this evil magic. And so as the show went on, like there was some pretty good songs. It felt very Broadway-esque. It was very like reminiscent of songs that you would hear from these Tony Award winning ones. And I believe that they actually got some of the writers who like did some of these musicals. I can't remember the names off the top of my head. I'm just being very vague. I apologize. But they definitely like tapped into that talent, and they had them write some of these songs. So this was a bright spot in that season, and it kind of ends up being like the reason why no one ever remembered that this happened was because one of the fairies like put all the songs of the people and they put it into Zoe, the main character, so that when the time came, she would have all the songs of the people that they were singing to defeat the actual evil in this episode. And so then she actually ends up singing in the real life, in the real world, which doesn't completely make sense, doesn't jive 100%, but you know, it's a show about fairy tales, so yeah, you expand your reality a little bit more. But I liked it. It had good songs, and this was another example of a show that had good singers. The evil queen, she wasn't the strongest singer, so they kind of gave her more of like a rock medley, whereas a little bit like talk/sing. But everyone else was pretty strong. So
all right. Sorry, I don't have anything to contribute to this conversation because I haven't seen this episode, but it sounded, when you were describing it, like coming into the fairy tale world, my thought was, this kind of sounds like the movie Enchanted.
It's similar in tone. I feel like Enchanted probably took the idea, but like, yeah, Once Upon a Time is a nice combination of Lost and Enchanted.
Okay. And when you're describing the character wanting everybody else to sing and like that was like a spell or something, kind of reminds me of the first big musical number in the 2011 Muppet movie. There's your reference for the day, for the episode, where like as soon as the bus flies away, everyone else like, they're gone, and they fall down.
Life's a fillet of fish. Hey, yes, it is.
That's the best line in that.
I love that line so much.
All right, do you want me to go next?
Yes.
All right, I'll do the one that has the least opportunity of being on your list. Did you have Even Stevens' Influenza the Musical?
I did have Even Stevens' Influenza the Musical. I went back and watched Even Stevens for the first time in over a decade.
I watched the whole series when Disney Plus came out. It was the first show I rewatched, followed by Lizzie McGuire.
Nice. Look at you, living your best life.
Because that was the show I watched when it was airing, and obviously it's a dream sequence. It was Ren is sick and not feeling great, and then so she imagines that she's at school and everyone's singing. And one thing I got to say is there are some songs in there that I think are stronger than others, but you were talking about how Mila Kunis had someone else singing for her. Uh-huh. In this one, it was very, even when I was a kid, I noticed this, very distracting. Her friend Nelson, her black guy friend, He clearly has someone else singing for him. It sounds nothing like him. And like the lip syncing is okay, but it's like it's very clear. They even had Shia LaBeouf singing, and he can't really sing that well. But for this guy, like, yeah, we got to get someone singing for this guy. And it was distracting in that song.
This was one where it's like the voices weren't bad, but they weren't like Broadway quality type. And so, Christy Carlson Romano can sing pretty well. And who's like her rival? I can't remember.
Larry Beale. Yeah, he can sing pretty well.
Yeah, and he was a strong singer too. And so like it wasn't terrible, but it's like one of the songs is about the gym class and the gym teacher singing. It's like he's not a singer. And you have like Shia LaBeouf also in there. He's not a singer either, but it was fine. It worked. And there's a charm to kind of having like a little bit of an unpolished singing voices for something like that. So I enjoyed it. This was one when I was talking about earlier was like the advertising for the episode. I remember Disney Channel just like promoting the crap out of this. Constant like documentary, like behind the scenes of this is how we did this. And like all before it even came out. And then showing clips of the show before it came out and doing like the musical like MTV type. I was like, this is the song from it, all leading up to it.
You know what song I loved, and because you wouldn't think from it from that. Yeah, I remember that as well. The Disney Channel was right in the middle of promoting, and I can picture the guy. He's like, this week on Disney Channel, it's Even Stevens, and they're singing a song. Tune in Friday at 7 a.m. for Shia LaBeouf and all his friends.
I can just imagine him actually saying, and they're singing a song. It's just like he's reading the script and then it gets done. It's like, seriously, that's all we came up with? They're singing a song.
Yeah, it wasn't grade A writing. You know, the song, it was the morning announcement song sung by the principal. Because first of all, he can sing pretty well, and you can just tell George Bell is eating that up. He loves that.
Yeah, it was that was I believe I watched this 2 days ago. I believe that was the first song that we saw in the show. And so that was a great like introduction to, hey, we're doing singing and a lot of fun.
Yeah. And the line I love from that song, he's going through the lost and found. He's like, looks like somebody lost their pants. There's an old salami sandwich and some complimentary ants. And I don't know why that line just stuck with me.
And there is the person in the back who lost their pants and he takes the pants.
And that person, not surprisingly, they clearly hired out people who are good at dancing, like some choreographed dancers to be in the musical numbers. And these same kids, if you're looking, are in every single scene, every single song. These same kids are in there, even though Lewis and the gym class and Ren in her science class are supposed to both be at sixth period at the same time, and these same kids are somehow in gym and in the science class at the same time.
I like that, even though that it's a dream and we know that it's a dream at the end, that there's kind of this degree of realism where she's singing about the moon and she just says the same thing about 1969. Like that's the only fact that she has. Yeah. And like everyone's enjoying it and the teacher's enjoying it. And it's like, it makes it seem like, just with her charm and her natural appeal that she's going to be able to beat this guy who like had this laser to turn a liver into chocolate. Like that's a middle school project. And so it's like, oh, because of her singing, it's going to end up being so good. And then like, oh no, you still get an F. Like I enjoyed that they did that. Yeah. And this is also really funny too. What her rival's Larry, right? I never use this term, but that whole thing of like him working so hard and having this just awe-inspiring invention, and then Ren coming up and like, I have a song about the moon and it has only like one fact. Like if that is white privilege right there. Yeah. Like Larry, like, are you kidding? All these white people are eating this up, and I'm just like, I created a freaking laser. I changed the molecular composition of liver. So
he still won.
He still won. And he deserved it, even if it was a dream.
Yeah, and you bring up, so that's the thing. So you ask anyone in our generation, what year did we go to the moon? We know that because of this song. We went to the moon in 1969. Like that song, that's why I know that.
Yes. I mean, I know it because it was the last possible year. So Kennedy made a promise that in this decade, we will go to
moon, and they barely got to the moon before the end of the decade.
Yeah. Also, did you notice that this song was foreshadowed at the beginning of the episode?
Yes, in the musical that she watches on
TV. It's the same tune.
TV. It is.
And it's, yeah.
Yes.
And then
I caught that.
Yeah. And then, okay, also a little disappointing. So in this show, they have an older brother. And since he's not part of the school set, which is where most of it takes place, he's got a couple episodes here and there where he gets to shine, but he's a lot of times just either not there or just kind of in the background. He gets one line in this whole episode at the end where he says, "You never should have gotten influenza," when she realizes that she got sick, and she's like a dream within a dream at the end there. And it's like, he's a good singer, and they gave him one line. It's like,
maybe he was like, I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't sing. Donnie wouldn't sing.
Well, actually, Even Stevens was one of the shows that during the pandemic they did a Zoom reunion, and it was kind of spearheaded by Donnie and Chris Carlson Romano and Nick Spano were kind of leading the whole thing. They didn't even have Shia LaBeouf because he's Shia LaBeouf, but it was kind of interesting. Those two were like the ones who were super into it, and like it's kind of cool to watch all these characters like 20 years later just talking about the show.
Nice. I've got ones from a show that actually had a number of different musical episodes. I think you could consider them musical episodes. I picked one to talk about, and that is from The Simpsons.
Okay.
They did an episode that pretty much parodied Mary Poppins. It was Simpsons Califragilisticexpialidocious.
Okay.
And the episode, like, this was like, because it was a parody, they took songs right out of Mary Poppins, and then they just changed the tune just a little bit, but it's very clearly they were like doing those songs.
Yeah.
And so this is a very different type of musical where it's kind of like almost blending that line between like original content and other, like, borrowing from other people, because it is parodying that. But this was a pretty good episode because, like, you had Mary Poppins there, and even like 2/3 into the episode, she's like, well, I've taught you all that I can. And it seemed like it was going to be a happy ending, and she leaves. And then all of a sudden, like, Homer throws Bart through the window and like is choking him. Like, as soon as she steps out, she's like, I have more work to do, and goes back in. And then it like stops being like that Mary Poppins Disney-esque, and then it turns into like they just treat her like a maid. And so, you know, they're just ordering her around. And then she starts trying to sing a song of like how it would be more fulfilling if they learned how to do this themselves. Like, we've got a good balance of what we do here, you know. So you just go ahead and get it for us. So it's like, you know, we're never gonna learn, we're never gonna evolve, and eventually she just ends up flying away on her umbrella and then gets sucked into an airplane turbine in the distance.
Well, that's just like the beginning of Lost.
Just like that. That's where they got this. Yeah, but this is still early on. This is still in prime Simpsons territory, like season 7 or 8, something like that.
Okay. I haven't seen that specific episode, but I can picture that. And The Simpsons does lend itself to, it's not a musical episode, a show, but it's not a big stretch for them to start singing.
Yeah, they've had a number of times where they do a music number in the show, and then there's been a couple other ones. Like they did one about a monorail that they brought to town.
I was just gonna say, I thought you were doing Monorail, which is Music Man, right?
Yes, Music Man. Yep. And that was another one that they really did a good job of parodying that and then borrowing those songs and making that work. So now after that, after Simpsons, we have 2 episodes left to talk about. And if you know our taste in shows, and if you're familiar with shows that have musical episodes, you would probably be able to guess what we're going to talk about. We've got 2 great ones that we could spend a lot of extra time talking about. So we're going to jump into, speaking of medical stuff, we're going to jump into Scrubs, the episode My Musical. This was another one that I remember seeing a lot of advertisements for. And another one also where they wrote their own music, of course, but that they had all of the actors singing the actual songs. Real
quick, before we start talking about this episode, I just want to clear up, is your trivia going to be about Judy Reyes?
It is not.
Okay, good. Because then I can bring it up now. Go ahead.
Because we know that she's Dominican?
Yes. Well, did you know the whole thing about Carla in this episode?
Yeah, she's Dominican.
Yeah. No, so Judy Reyes, who plays Carla in this episode, she had like this crazy back injury. And so with the exception of the dance number that she has, she's like sitting down or absent in all of the songs. Like she's not in the big Welcome to Sacred Heart musical number because she clearly couldn't move. And they had to film the dance number with her and Turk like 3-4 months later than the whole episode because they had to wait for her to heal. That's why in every other song, like the song that's about her, she's randomly sitting down in a chair because it was too painful for her to stand up.
Man, wow, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Like, you feel bad for her, but the writers did a really good job of writing around that because is believable for her to be in a chair, even though, yeah, she had given birth, like it had been a little bit of time. So I mean, she's recuperated by then, but it's still more believable because it feels like it like just happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this one, the reason, okay, this is another lady faints at a park, and we realize later she has like a brain tumor, a brain aneurysm, and that's what's causing her to see everybody else is singing. Because you got to have the excuse as to why everyone's singing.
Yes, exactly. And the songs that they do, it gets both credit and just a couple points off for the fact that they're all very unique. Like they pull different genres. So like the stuff about Carla and Turk is that tango salsa type. Yeah. They do a very traditional Broadway ending where it's like speaking of derivative, it does two different finales where like it does like this song from Grease almost, and then it transitions into like, you know, For Good from Wicked, or maybe like from Rent, you know, a song of that type. And I like that song, by the way. I like how they end it like, you're gonna be okay, that's what's gonna happen. That's a great song. But it is because like they might not, you know, I'm sorry, let me back up. They did also, I know for this, they pulled people from Broadway to write these songs for them, but because they're very intentionally going for like, oh, we want this to be the song like from Grease, we want it to be like that, we want this to be like a tango note. Because of that, it does end up being just a little derivative, but I don't take too many points off because you're not watching the show to be wowed and amazed by this music. You're watching it for some comedic music and to enjoy these characters doing something out of the blue, out of the ordinary that they've never done. And
I do have to give them also props for the conceit that it's all in this one patient's head. So there's a couple times where a scene starts where they're just talking, and then as soon as that patient gets wheeled up near them, that's when they start singing.
Yeah.
It's like, she's not around, they're not singing.
And I again said I was impressed with some of the voices too. You know, Carla has a good voice.
Turk has a good voice. Turk has
I was gonna say I didn't think he did. I felt like they gave him a short enough amount of stuff that he didn't have to show off how bad his voice was.
Well, when he gets to that low voice, like when till that moose-haired little nuisance is no more, that super deep voice, like that's impressive.
Yeah. John C. McGinley is like, he's just right. He's in the middle. He's just fine. And it's like, you listen to him and it's not going to pull you out of it, but you're not like, I need to hear this guy sing more.
Well, I think the worst is Sarah Chalk, which is why she doesn't sing a whole lot.
Yeah. I think Kelso's isn't so strong, but it's another one where it's like, you know, you give him just a little bit amount, and it's also partially where he does like the sing talk. Yeah, like you can always tell who's not as good of a singer in these sort of episodes when they're like give them some sing talk lines instead.
Yeah, and of course, I mean this was made for the late great Sam Lloyd and his group, who is an actual singer. His a cappella group is a real, well, at least was called a real group called the Blanks.
Yeah. Yeah, well, their big part was when Carla's not coming back, the song about her not coming back.
We're going to miss you, Carla. Yeah. And also I heard that the Todd just loved this, even though he had like 2 lines.
Yeah. Man, it would be fun to be on these shows. Of course, like the song that I think gets the most credit in this episode is Guy Love.
Guy Love, yeah. I mean, it's creative, it's funny, it's well done, I think.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun to poke. You know, it's poking fun at their relationship, but it's, you know, it's a well-written song. It's a good duet, and it's funny. I like Guy Love, but it's not my favorite song in there. It's not my kids' favorite song either. Weirdly enough, you're like, why do your kids listen?
Wait, can I guess?
What
is it? The Pooh song?
That is Elijah's. Elijah loved it. I had that song on the other day, and he's just like, this is so funny. And I'm like, you've never even just seen this episode. You don't know what's going on.
He doesn't need to know.
But my favorite is the ending song. That's what's going to happen. It's a nice sentimental. I really like to see Scrubs when they do those serious moments, and they did a serious moment for just those couple minutes of like, we need to remember this is a patient and we're here to encourage you. We're not going to have our like fun goofness in the background. We're going to make sure you're okay. That's what we're here for.
Yeah. And going back real quick, that is a good one. The only thing there is, why is everybody in the hospital coming into her hospital room at the very end? Like the janitor, the lawyers, like
we at Sacred Heart, we only have one patient at a time.
But I was going to go back to Guy Love. I just recently discovered this. I don't know when they did it, but so the Blanks, which is Sam Lloyd and his group, they did a cover of Guy Love, and they have a music video where it's these four guys in a bar singing the Guy Love, and they changed the lyrics a little bit so that it makes sense, because a couple of the lines were very specific about Turk and JD. They changed those, but it's those guys singing, and while they're singing, the bartender cleaning up the bar is Ken Jenkins, who plays Dr. Kelso, and at the very end, he gives Ted a big hug.
Aww.
So go look that up on YouTube if you're interested in that. But no, this was a good episode. Very well done. They utilized the cast in a lot of good ways.
Yeah, I agree. It was very well written. To me, this shows you what these musical type episodes should be. So I think that this was one of the best that I had seen up until the next one we're going to talk about. And even then, I don't know if that one's better, but it's on the same level. Yes. And that is Community, regional holiday music, or as some call it, the Glee episode, the one that's all about them getting brainwashed to join Glee and make it to regionals. And this is another one that like it leaned into that comedy so well. Once again, it does that same thing of like, well, we're gonna try a couple different genres as we're doing it. I really like the History of Rock and Roll song that they Pierce with.
Baby Boomer Santa. Yeah, I think that's Santa. One of the better ones. I mean, you get Donald Glover singing, and that's going to be good. This is the origin of Childish Gambino.
I mean, he's. It's funny. It's like everyone on there can sing pretty well. Chevy Chase, not as much. Abed, not as much. But the others, like, did a really good job.
Yeah, there's a video or an interview I saw where Danny Pudi, who plays Abed, said that like some point during Community, Donald Glover showed him like, hey, look, I made some rap music. You want to listen to it? And he was like he's blown away, like, holy crap, this is like actually good. And he said like, that was the moment when I realized, he's not going to be on our show forever, is he?
Oh, you're very talented. Okay, well. I was speaking to Donald Glover. I was saying to Terrence, I don't know if I said it during the episode that we talked about or if it was like after when we're just talking, but I was telling him I really want to see a Star Wars movie or show that has both Donald Glover and Billy D. Williams and tells a Lando story, but it jumps back and forth between past and present and like how they kind of tie together, similar to like a Lost type episode. I think that would be really great to have both of them back in a story that combines both time periods.
It wouldn't surprise me if that happens, because this is a comment I was going to save for our Obi-Wan Kenobi podcast in like a few weeks, but it kind of feels like Star Wars right now. It's like, we're going to keep making content forever. So eventually we're going to have a movie or a show about every character you can think of. Like, I mean, eventually down the road, like, well, who's left? Okay, I guess we're going to do the origins of Jar Jar.
And to be fair, that's also what George Lucas did with toys and marketing. He's like, all right, what haven't I gotten money out of? Oh, here's this droid that was in the background of Empire Strikes Back. I'm going to give him this long backstory, and I'm going to sell toys about him. Because George Lucas, like when he created Star Wars, it took more in favor instead of like points for like getting money from the show, like royalty that way. He's like, I want the merchandising rights. And he sacrificed some of the money from like the movies to get merchandising rights. And he has a last laugh because holy cow, Star Wars merchandising is insane.
Merchandising in general is crazy. Because I mean, thinking about another Muppets reference, and back in the day, like Jim Henson had like sole rights to Sesame Street merchandise, and like holy cow with that too. Like that, like yeah.
I thought you were going to go over the route of Spaceballs, which mocks the merchandising of it. Spaceballs, the flamethrower.
Oh well, yeah, that too. I could have gone that direction as well.
Merchandising.
But okay, getting back to this episode of Community, which we're supposedly talking about.
What are you saying? I don't know.
You said it's a mock of Glee, and I think it's partially because behind the scenes, I've seen the commentary because with Community, there's commentary on every single episode of the DVDs, and it's some of the funniest commentary. Mm-hmm. I think they shared the same stage as Glee, and Glee got like all the resources, all the money, whereas Community was like on the verge of being canceled every episode, so they kind of had a little bit of bitterness there. And so the whole thing was, we're trying to get to regionals, which like nobody really understood, and they keep saying, what's regionals? Don't worry about it. We're almost there, which was basically just making fun of Glee. And that first song, where it's Taran Killam's character playing Mr. Rad, is getting Abed first. I love the line where he's like, "How's your piano still playing that song?"
I love that. Real quick, so Glee was Fox and Community was NBC. I think that maybe the thing might have been that like they were in a competing time slot, because I believe they were both on Thursday night.
Oh, that could be it.
So I of course, Glee when's beating your butt, and you're like, "Are you kidding me? Like, we're a better show. We should get the." But no. Speaking of great lines, this episode does have one of my favorite lines in Community towards the end when they're doing like their whole presentation, and then Britta comes out, and Jim Rash is like, "Oh, Britta's in this."
Yes.
Just so disappointed. Immediately brings down everything for her just to be on stage.
That is a tremendous Britta line, or Dean line about Britta.
It might be my favorite line in the series. I love it so much.
And I wonder if Gillian Jacobs wasn't a great singer, because like, it's kind of like Elliot with Scrubs. They didn't give her a whole lot to do, at the point where the whole joke was that like she's playing a tree, like everyone else is singing, and it's like, well, yeah, for the solo we'll have Shirley or Annie. And I was like, well, Britta's there too. Yeah, Britta's playing a mute tree. And he's like, slaps his hand away. I did not like the sexy Santa stuff with Annie. That was just kind of cringy, I thought.
It is. I wouldn't say I like it, but I understand the point of it, because it is supposed to be cringy. And I mean, even Jeff is commenting on it. It's like, I think you've reached a point of diminishing returns here.
On the sexiness, yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the things, so when they initially got Annie, so it's like one by one, they get brainwashed. And Annie walks into a room with Abed and Mr. Rad, and they start singing. And then all of a sudden she goes to turn away. And then the door just shuts, and Troy's behind the door also singing, which means that Troy was just hanging out behind the door, waiting for someone to walk in so they could trap them inside.
This show is so absurd, but I mean that's the beauty of it. It's so good.
Yeah,
I think that this show is better when it leans into its absurdity like that, but not when it comes to Ken Jeong's character. Like, his absurdity is too much. It's so weird that his absurdity is too absurd for this absurd show.
Yeah, I think I used to have a blog, and I wrote a blog post about the rise and fall of Chang, and how like after season 3 they had no idea what to do with Chang, and it makes no sense that he's around for those last 3 seasons.
Yeah, I don't mind the Changnesia thing, because it at least is a way to kind of like reboot his personality, so to speak.
And then season 5, like, oh yeah, there's no Changnesia, I'm just here now. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, like, they needed a reset. That's where I give credit to it, because they needed a reset. They knew that they went too far in season 3 with him, and they needed to reset his character. And while Amnesia, you probably could have come up with other stuff that is better, that at least was a nice excuse to be able to finally get to, okay, he's a more normal character and part of the group instead of the antagonist of the group anymore.
Yeah. So one of the songs in the show is the Christmas rap. It's when Abed gets Troy. And okay, I never in a million years would have even noticed this, and I still can't hear it, but on the commentary, Dan Harmon is one of the guys in the commentary, and you can hear him as he's watching the commentary. He's realizing that the beat is off by just like a tiny bit, and he is like so disappointed, and he's like so distracted by it. You see him realize that, and it's too late. The episode's been aired. It's at the time of the DVDs, and he's just realizing now that something got screwed up in the editing of the music, and it just shows the perfectionist of him, because like no one would have ever noticed, but he is so locked into that it's like that was distracting to him during that song.
Yeah, as creators, like creators tend to be more that perfectionist style. There's, you and I, we're not perfectionists, because like if we were, we would be at this. We'd put so much more time into doing our podcast.
Yeah.
But we like it to be. If there's a problem and we see the problem after it's already aired, we're gonna think back with like cringe thoughts every time we think about it, I'm sure. So like I can empathize with that. I get it completely.
Well, okay. When we first started doing this podcast, the first few episodes, when I was editing it, I would listen through the whole episode like 3 times. Like I would every time, oh, did I breathe here? I'm gonna edit that out. And I still listen through it. I edit out because I cough a lot. I'll edit that stuff out. But compared to now, I'll go through it once. And there's even been a few times when I'm editing, when I'm exhausted because I work overnights, and I just kind of nodded off for the last few minutes. Okay, it's fine. And I just I just go finish editing and send it to you. And so like it's kind of a difference between like when something is brand new and like I'm gonna listen to every second of this 3 times. I don't have time for that.
I barely have time to sleep. What am I doing? So there you go. There's a peek behind the curtain of the editing process. You're welcome. For everyone who has been asking us about that,
Yep.
which is no one.
Although I will say, so last week's episode, if you want to go back and, well, you won't find it because I did editing really well. Matt, at one point during the editing, one of your kids in the background, you could hear him saying, while you're talking, so it's on your audio, one of your kids says, "Dad, I need your help with something." And it's very clear. So I was able to like cut out just part of your sentence so you didn't hear that. And I was able to do it in a way where it made sense. It wasn't like, you still got the gist of what you were saying without the distracting of your kid in the background saying, "Dad, I need your help with something."
See, that's professional work right there. And this is also why you get duct tape for your kids. Just for an hour, they just,
Yeah, it happens every now and then. And I cut it out where Matt has to tell one of his kids, "Okay, hold on a second. Yeah, I'm recording. You can't be down here right now." And I always cut the part out.
It's very nice of him to do that. What are you doing in here? Get out of this room.
Yeah. Except the one time I wanted someone to come interrupt you, it didn't happen because we were talking about the Slapsgiving on Thanksgiving, and I thought of it too late. I messaged Angie during the recording. I was like, "Hey, can you go and just slap Matt right now?"
She's like, "I've already done it like 5 times today. That's too much at this point."
I know, that would have been such a good moment.
Well, too bad. The slap didn't happen. The slap that never was.
All right. Is there anything else that we missed with the community regional holiday music?
I don't think so. I did look up online. I was like, what are some best musicals? And so apparently there's a lot of shows that did musical episodes. Now, it's not ones that I've watched. Like I've never watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but like that was like the number 1 on someone's list. Like, oh, this is the best one. I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize they did one of these. So
yeah, one of the most egregious in a bad way forms of music, to get the trifecta of tangents. Okay, there's an episode of Power Rangers Zeo. And okay, this show has a very low bar of quality to begin with, right? So there's an episode where the Rangers get hit with like a magical spell that makes them all hate each other and like, "I'm mean, no, I don't like you," that kind of generic spell. It's a magic spell. It should take like either magic or punching a monster to fix it. That's normally how it works, right? Instead, it's a Christmas episode. At the end, this little girl comes up and sings a song about like love or togetherness or something cheesy like that. And that little girl, who's not a magic person, she's just this little girl, is enough to reverse the spell. And all of a sudden the Rangers are friends again. Like, laziest writing ever.
That sounds like a much worse version of that Once Upon a Time episode I watched. I also watched this week because it was on a list. I was like, oh, I don't remember this being a musical episode, and I didn't bring it up because it's not. But the first time series finale of Futurama is another one of those shows because Matt Groening, he doesn't mind like putting music into his shows. But this wasn't a musical number. It was the one where Fry gets the robot devil's hands, so that he can impress Leela with his ability to play this instrument, and he creates this whole opera around her. Yeah. And the opera, like, there's a couple songs that it's like the singing lasts about 5 minutes of the episodes. There's a couple songs you see from his opera, but then they all do like a musical number together about like keeping the hands and like how the robot devil is trying to thwart them or whatever. And that song, like it's funny because they do draw attention to the fact that like they're all singing. So it's like, someone says like, oh, the robot devil is so unforgiving, and then Zoidberg's like, I can't believe we're all ad-libbing. It's like it's a really funny episode. I liked the whole episode. It was also had like a sweet moment of like he's just doing this for Leela and like a cute thing for their relationship. But then the show gets canceled after that, so that ends up being kind of its actual series finale the first time before it gets brought back.
How many series finales did they have?
I feel like they had like 5. They had the series finale, then they had like 4 different movies that I remember
the movies, yeah.
And then they got brought back, and I think they got canceled again. And then I think we're in that time where we're waiting for the reboot to happen. So I think that would have been technically 3.
I think so. When those movies came back, that was the time that you and I were filming this movie Jeremy with youth group. And I remember we were at the school that let us film the school scenes. It was a scene where like I was in some scenes, but not other scenes. And so when you guys were filming the scenes that I wasn't in, I was in the hallway on my laptop watching the Futurama movies until it was my turn to come in and film again.
Nice. Man, that was so much fun. I really enjoyed Jeremy. That was a good project.
We might have to talk about that in a few weeks because we will have a spoiler alert for I think in 3 weeks we're going to have one of the stars of both Jeremy and Kairos. Brandon's going to come on, so we'll have to give his thoughts on those.
Yeah. Yep. So we'll ask him if he remembers doing that or if he's blocked it out, because when you have trauma, sometimes your brain blocks out trauma. No, it was a really, I actually really thought that was a good script, and we did decent for what we were able to do at the time. Yeah, and so I really have no regrets about it.
No, me too. It's easy to throw shots at it, but it was fun, and I think it was well done.
It is definitely low budget. If you watch it, if you somehow are able to see it and find it and watch it, you're going to be like, yeah, this is definitely low budget.
Well, considering I can't even find Jeremy, do you have a copy of it somewhere? I know it was on Vimeo at some point. I cannot find it. I looked for a while.
Have we asked Paul? Paul might.
I don't know. Also, definitely not all the way legal because we definitely use music with definitely no. But
it's legal because of the fact that we're not selling it at all. So we don't make any money off of it.
We made negative money off of this.
We made negative money off of it. So it's completely fine for us to use copyrighted music on it if we're not making any sort of profit at all.
Okay, cool.
So there you go. That a little bit of lesson in copyright for everyone out there. Let's jump into trivia. What was last week's trivia, Brian?
Last week was Andrew's trivia, and it was about Halo. Do you remember what it was about? Okay.
What is the first planet that here, let me start back over. So the trivia last week was, what is the first planet that the humans met the Covenant on? And that planet is not Reach, it's Harvest, believe it or not. So Harvest is the answer. First encountered the Covenant. All right. This week's trivia is, we know that we went to the moon in 1969.
Correct.
But what long-time running TV show debuted in 1969 and still is making shows or movies today?
There are 2 correct answers to this.
Are there? Well, there you go. So either one of them we mentioned already in this episode, but that's a little hint for you.
Yep. Actually, no, we've mentioned both of them in this episode.
We have mentioned, but okay. Then in that case, I know what the other one is. Yeah. Well, what a day! What a day that we've had. We're gonna sing us out. So, Brian, go ahead and put on the music.
Doot, 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 doot.
That's it. That's perfect. That's what I was going for. Until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And we're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.